What's that, everybody? Tons of recruiting movement across the SEC. Is Auburn owning the state of Alabama? We're going to talk about with our Locked On recruiting insider, Brian Smith. Locked On SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what is happening, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to Everydayers. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by the Gametime app. Download Gametime, create an account, use our code LOCKEDONCollege, get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. I actually just used it the other night to go to a baseball game, so recommend the Gametime app. All right, let's jump right into it. Our buddy Brian Smith, he is our recruiting insider here at Locked On, and he has been super busy. Brian, welcome in, man. I know you've been traveling all over the place.
Getting ready to go back down to Florida, but yeah, it's that time of year. We're in the recruiting backstretch, getting ready for the season. We're only, I think it's 25 days, 24 days, something like that, before Florida State plays Georgia Tech. So football season's almost here, brother.
Yeah, it's crazy how quickly. I mean, there is no off season anymore. It's just constant schedule of college football stuff going on. Before we get into some of the specific schools, catch me up on what you've been. I know you were down in Florida at the Under Armour event. I know you were at Big Cat Weekend at Auburn. Just kind of give me a headline of maybe some kids who maybe caught your eye here the last couple of weeks.
If you haven't heard of Chris Henry Jr., yes, the father is one you probably know. Played in the NFL. You're going too soon. It's a kid from California that Georgia, Tennessee, and everybody's still trying to recruit. He's committed to Ohio State. That's a 6'5" receiver that runs by guys. He was at Under Armour Future 50. He's been dominant all over the place. Cedarian Morgan and a whole bunch of other receivers in the class of 26 are already blowing up. Cedarian's a kid from Alabama that everybody wants. He was at Big Cat Weekend. He was dominant at the Future 50. There's just so many young guys. Like when I walk by them, Chris, it's like, you're 16 years old? Because Cedarian is 210 pounds, looks like he's 22 already. And he's got 2 years of high school left. In the spring, he went against Auburn High and that's one of the best programs in the state of Alabama, and just toyed with them and destroyed them. So it's amazing, especially at the receiver position, how good the country is with these big body guys. It's amazing. And then you look at like the way the recruiting's going in the SEC, there's been just a plethora of commitments. Auburn's the hottest team in the country. They've got like 6-7 commitments, something like that in the last few days. And they got a couple more they're probably going to get. And it's a lot of these guys. You're seeing more length, more height, more size and speed. Auburn in particular has went way up the ladder, but everywhere I go, it's the same thing. It's the size factor, all these camps and combines.
Well, that's where I wanted to start. You were at Big Cat Weekend. Catch me up on what's been happening at Auburn. They've really been capitalizing on the kids in the state. Obviously, the flip of Antonio Coleman, the commitment from Derek Smith and Anquan Fagans. That now gives Auburn, I think I counted 7 of the top 10 players in the state of Alabama. They are expected to possibly get Jared Smith the edge. The other 2 kids are already Ohio State commits. But what has Hugh Freeze and company been doing there?
They've just focused on it. Hugh's even commented at a few press conferences in the last 6 months, hey, our priority is this state, Georgia, Mississippi, kind of like the states that connect, and then a little bit of Florida too. And they've done it. I know they've got a really good class, but Alabama has done everything backwards. They've recruited California and Pennsylvania and stuff. It's working, but I don't know how sustainable that is long-term, but you got to give them credit. But they're getting killed in state, and I just don't think they care. So it was never that way under Saban. Like the top kids, he didn't want Auburn to get them. I don't think Bama cares that much. Now, Derek Smith, they wanted like that, and they wanted Antonio Coleman. They can say otherwise. If you go to Alabama message board, you see all this "we didn't care" stuff, which typical Auburn Alabama fan stuff. But those are really good players. Derek Smith is a top 50 player in the country, in my opinion. I don't care what position he plays. He is. To flip him from Bama was huge, and Coleman's probably the best pure defensive tackle in the state, as far as being a guy that can play multiple spots. He could be a nose or a D tackle, and he's a penetrator. I think he's just as good, if not better, than the kid already committed to Auburn. The 1-2 punch is as good as it is in the country. If they get Jared Smith, which I expect them to, And they've got Bryce Deese and some other guys up in their front seven. This is a loaded group. This will be the best defensive class Auburn's had in forever. And they got Fagans, like you mentioned. They've already got Eric Winters, who I think is the best overall player in the state in terms of just being a football player. The kid committed to Ohio State's the best player in general, but he's a corner. He's a pure corner. They are just loading up. And again, Alabama's not showing a ton of resistance, which is wild to me. Just wild.
I know quickly on Coleman, he went, Bama, Auburn, Bama, Auburn. Is he locked in now? Are we sure he's going Auburn?
No. Until I see him sign, the answer is no. Okay. If you've decommitted 3 times, well, I'm done with that. You got to prove it to me now. And he's a nice kid. I know him, but I need to see it. I don't care if he quotes it to me to my face. I need to see it. That's just me. I'm a pessimist, but that's 3 times and you haven't started your senior year. So I got to see it, man.
That's the old signing day. Until the facts came in, you
exactly
didn't know until it happened. Let's talk about the flip side, because Alabama is sitting there at the number 2, and we're going by 24/7 Sports, but the number 2 overall class in the composite rankings. Kalen DeBoer's doing a really good job, even though they're not getting kids in state. I know they just got
wild.
They just got the 5-star lineman Ty Haywood from Texas, the 5-star wide receiver Caleb Cunningham from Mississippi. What do you make of how they're doing this?
I've never seen anything like it. Period. It's for Bama. Now, others like Stanford, Notre Dame, Duke, certain schools have to recruit national because academic. Bama doesn't have to do it that way. And I know that part of their staff is from the West Coast. I get it. But they still got Roach and some other guys that are more local that are been at Bama and have connections, and they still haven't done it. I have no idea how to present this, because if they don't win big early, and they may, some of these high school coaches are going to remember this. This state is very proud. So they better win. But their recruiting class is dope. The Russell kid, the quarterback, he won Elite 11. He does not play around. He's playing for Duncanville, one of the best high school prep football programs in the country. And I think he'll come in redshirt and then as a second-year player, compete for the starting job there. I mean, they have players across the board. Now the only question is, can they get some of the D linemen too? That's the one missing part.
He was an SMU commit. Did people make too much of that? Because it felt like Bama's going to get an SMU kid, but at the Elite 11 and stuff, we've seen him.
Yeah.
Awesome.
When you watch his film, now he's playing for a program, and I'm not exaggerating, Duncanville, where he's at in the Dallas area, there'll be 290 across the board. They just bludgeon people. And then he's got DeCorian Moore, who I think is arguably the best receiver in the country. They go play action every now and then, hit DeCorian on a post. It's kind of like 1992 Dallas Cowboys. They just destroy you up front, and then they throw deep. That's what they do. But he's really accurate. He's just a kid that took a little longer to develop, and he's got the height. He's 6'3", 6'4". Yeah, I don't care when you develop if we know it. The jump that he's made in the last year is massive. Good for him. If you'd have told me he was going to win Elite 11, I'd have said you're crazy. But he really started to progress through spring, getting more offers, and then he went out and won it. So that's a big-time player.
Yeah, Caden Durham at LSU came from Duncanville.
Yeah,
so
that program is just insane. It's insane.
It seems to all be going to SEC schools too now. One more of this segment. Let's touch on Georgia. They have been adding to their number 3 ranked recruiting class. Safety Rashad Johnson, safety Jalen Morgan, offensive lineman Cortez Smith. Just seems like Kirby's doing what he normally does. And they've been getting some kids. They've been on some of these kids that are committed to USC, trying to get them to flip as well.
Well, the key here at the back end of this, I don't know when they're going to make announcements, but Justice Terry, who I think is arguably the best overall player in the country, and Elijah Griffin, who's also in that conversation, are 2 elite D linemen in the state of Georgia they're expected to get. They already got a couple guys committed, and they got J.J. Hanning commit. The kid, I think he's from Germany or something like that originally, but he lives in California. He just committed. They're going to have an all-time D-line class, which is bad for the rest of college football, because it's not like they need a whole – they play 3 D linemen. I don't know where all these guys are playing. So that's the question. He's already got a 370-pound nose guard committed. So Georgia will end up in the top 3 of the recruiting rankings. Don't feel bad for the Bulldogs. They're doing just fine.
Yeah, and hopefully they drive safely, all these kids that are committing to Georgia. We'll see what happens there. All right, we got plenty more to get into. We will touch on a lot more teams in the SEC with Brian Smith. More recruiting talk across the SEC coming your way here in just a second. But first, I want to remind you guys, today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at the Gametime app. And look, when you talk about the Gametime app, I told you guys a little bit earlier, I just used them the other night. They are an authorized ticket marketplace for Major League Baseball, makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer we get to first pitch. And they got killer last-minute deals, the all-in prices, the views from your seat, and the lowest price guarantee. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets. What I did was wanted to go see Paul Skeens, the former LSU guy playing against the Houston Astros. Went to the app literally just a couple hours before first pitch. I like to do the all-in pricing toggle because that's the price it says, boom, that's what you're going to pay, and got a really good deal. They show you like the zone deals where, you know, you could save more if you pick like a certain zone. You can, they got the flash deals where, you know, you get exclusive deals in the app when you use it. And then the seat views. I mean, you can get a panoramic view from your seat on what exactly your view is going to look like for the game. So go take the guesswork out of buying tickets, Major League Baseball tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use our code LOCKEDONCollege. Get $20 off your first purchase. If you've never used them before, terms apply. Create an account, redeem our code LOCKEDONCollege. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. This episode also brought to you by our friends over at Factor Meals. Warmer, sunnier days all throughout this summer, and you can fuel up with Factor's no prep, no mess meals. You can meet your wellness goals all throughout this summer thanks to the menu of chef-crafted meals with options like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, Keto, whatever you're looking for. Kickstart your new healthy routine with 35 different meals. They got more than 60 add-ons to choose from every week, so you're always going to have new flavors to try out. You can make your day delicious from breakfast to dessert. Stay fueled with easy, nutritious options with Factor Meals. Treat yourself to restaurant-quality meals. They have premium ingredients like filet mignon, shrimp, blackened salmon, tons of stuff that are great tasting and, you know, again, going to be good for you. Keep your kitchen time to a minimum. Factor Meals, they're ready in 2 minutes. No shopping, prepping, cooking, cleaning up, all that stuff. Head to factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50. Use our code LockedOnCollege50. That's going to get you 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. That's LockedOnCollege50 is our code at factormeals.com/LockedOnCollege50. Get 50% off your first box, 20% off your next month while your subscription is active. And you can see the code right there on your screen. Go check them out today. All right, as we dive back into it, talking with our buddy Brian Smith, our recruiting insider here on Locked On. Thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to everydayers. Keep coming back and checking us out each and every day. Brian, next up, want to talk about Baton Rouge, LSU, and Brian Kelly. They continue to stack this 2025 class. Obviously, they got the number one quarterback in Bryce Underwood, but, you know, for all the talk of them missing on a Decorian Moore a couple weeks ago, they go and add one of the top wide receivers in Derek Meadows out of Bishop Gorman. They also get a four-star edge in Damian Shanklin out of Indianapolis, big Zion Williams, big D lineman from Texas. Seems like you kind of need to keep an eye on what Brian Kelly is doing there in Baton Rouge.
There's very, very good recruiting going on there because they've been steady. They jumped out really fast. Early on, they had the best class in the country. Of course, getting Bryce kind of helps in that regard. But they're alleviating some needs. D-tackle is a problem. They're going out and they're getting to some of those guys. The kid out of Texas you just mentioned, that's an elite player. That's a kid that can play early, and that's also a kid that, quite honestly, has the girth to be a two-gap player if they ran a 3-4. You need kids like that if you're going to beat A&M, Bama, Georgia, etc. So their class should end up in the top 6-7 in the country, conservatively, and they just got to finish. Now, they can get Jamie French. That's the kid they just had on campus this past weekend, among others. That would help. They need like one more elite guy. And since they lost to Corey Moore, he's not committed to Oregon, French would fill that too. So it's not like LSU's ever short on receivers, but I'm sure they'd be happy to. Yeah, they're not hurting there. But they need to get kids like this consistently. If you're going to bring Bryce, he's going to want guys. And I'm guessing he's probably helping the receiver group pretty easily.
It seems like every couple of years they not only have one first-round pick wide receiver,
they'll have
two in the same group. It usually works out that way. How about over in Knoxville? Tennessee picks up a big-time tight end this past week in 4-star. I think it's Dazon. Is it Brum, whatever it is, from Kansas.
Yeah, Brum. Yeah.
It's an interesting pickup because Josh Heupel, they've used the tight ends a little bit here and there. They had Princeton Fant, they had McCallum Castles, but I look at this kid, Brian, 6'6", 235, like big body kid, get the ball in his hands and big time pickup for the balls.
I've seen him play a few times. That's not a normal tight end. That's a big receiver, really. And that offense is really difficult. I was actually talking to some recruits about that this weekend at an event. That offense as a defensive back is no fun because you're so spread out. If a kid that big at 6'6", and he's legit 6'5", he's a big dude. One-on-one with a 6-foot safety, good luck. And you're not going to split a linebacker out on him. So that's the kind of thing that they haven't had a ton of. They've had good receivers, but that flex tight end, big-bodied receiver guy, like he could be their weapon in the red zone. And, of course, Nico is a very unique player anyway. That offense is going to be awful for teams to prepare for a long time. I would not want to prepare for it. I mean, remember now, they ate up Saban's defense a couple of years ago. It doesn't get much better than that.
Yeah, well, and they don't keep in mind they went to Baton Rouge, Death Valley, and ran it up on LSU. I mean, it's the Josh Heupel offense has worked. The question is, can the defense catch up? And if the defense catches up and they get into the really great to elite category, look out.
They can beat anybody and win a title. There's absolutely no doubt about it.
Let's head over to College Station. Mike Elko and A&M, they are picking up some steam. They're into the top 10 class currently. A couple of commits in four-star athlete Kelshawn Johnson, edge rusher Marco Jones from California, four-star athlete, and Noah McHale from California. The thing that jumps out to me looking at this class, Brian, is they got 4 kids from the state of Alabama. A little bit unusual because we're just used to A&M recruiting kids from Texas, and they got a ton from Texas, but a little bit unusual there. Mike Elko, I don't know what the tie is there with California, but handful of kids from California coming to College Station.
Recruiting is about relationships. Some of the kids you mentioned, I know they played with California Power 7-on or their 5-on teams. And to be honest, they're all big time. Marco's a big time edge rusher. I think they've done a tremendous job as a first year staff recruiting. That'll probably be around number 10 in the nation when all things are done. That's pretty good for your first year. And they're getting versatility with guys across the board. I was looking at their class a little bit ago. I think the relationships they have from where they brought guys is how they recruited. They had guys they knew from Alabama, from their staff, guys from California. So they just recruited them. They'll go more and more Louisiana, Texas, Oklahoma as time goes on. But you got to recruit based on where you know. And they've done a great job, man. If it's, look at Alabama. I mean, that's the ultimate all over the place. But A&M has done a great job with what they have. And they're still getting some of the key guys in state too. Now the question is, can they have a good season, Chris? Multiply that opportunity because Elko's a good coach. He is a good coach.
Yep.
If they can go 9-3 or better, they can start winning a few more of those in-state battles, and then they can get ahead of the game and just be on a whole nother level. They're close to it, but I think some kids want to see it first.
Yeah, I've heard from a couple of coaches in the state of Texas. They just like Elko's authenticity. He pulls up in his pickup truck without a whole entourage. It's just him, and he's coming to talk to the kids. And Jimbo came with a little bit of swagger and people with him, or didn't come at all. Talking to some Texas high school coaches, so I know that they appreciate Elko and his authenticity. Another guy that's doing a great job recruiting. How about Brent Venables over at Oklahoma? They pick up a big-time wide receiver in Elijah Thomas from the state. They get Cortez Mills from Homestead, Florida. Just feels like Oklahoma, man. They just keep loading up on wide receiver talent.
Isn't it amazing the speed and stuff that Oklahoma, like in the last 10 years, they're one of the best receiver teams of all time. It seems like it's just been so many guys. Of course, certain guy for the Cowboys right now is a primary point. But when I was growing up, it was all about the wishbone and everything. They didn't even throw the ball. It's so bizarre. But yeah, they've done a great job. They're hitting Texas hard. They're winning their fair share of battles, beating out the Alabamas and Texas A&Ms. Again, they're in a good spot. Now, this year, they may not have a great team. They're starting over a little bit, new quarterback, et cetera. But I think long-term, Venables is going to have that program in the top 10 consistently, and the recruiting like it. They're getting some kids that everybody wants, the LSUs and stuff want. So they'll be fine. This is going to be a really good class.
Yeah, I mean, Jackson Arnold is a freshman quarterback. If he's really good, I mean, all these wide receiver recruits are going to be playing with him for the next couple of years and so on and so forth. So it'll be interesting to watch that. All right, still more to come here on Locked On SEC, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're going to hit on a few more SEC teams with Brian Smith, our recruiting insider here on Locked On. First, I want to remind you guys, today's episode is presented to you by our friends over at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. At eBay Motors, got everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, whether it's roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, whatever it is you need, whether you're in the speed, power, style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you're always going to find exactly what you're looking for. And with that eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts at all the prices you want and all the parts you need, it's going to be easy to make your car that MVP and bring home huge victories. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. That's ebaymotors.com. All right, we dive back into it. One more segment with our buddy Brian Smith here on Locked On SEC, talking all things recruiting. And Brian, seems like the momentum has slowed down a little bit for Steve Sarkisian and the Texas Longhorns. They came out of the gate strong, and now I look, they're about number 14 in the composite rankings. They did recently add four-star athlete Nick Townsend from Houston, Smith Orogbo, a four-star edge from Houston. Ton of defensive talent in this class, and it's telling me all the questions, is Texas SEC ready? And they're loading up on that defensive side of the ball.
They just flipped Josiah Sharman, too, the kid from California, from Oregon, a big D tackle. They lost arguably the best interior run stuffing combo in the country this past year, and that's one of the question marks about Texas coming into this season. But at the same time, it's still Texas. It's a good class. They haven't hit quite as many offensive guys. Your point is right. They're still waiting on Michael Terry and a few other guys, but I'm a little surprised by that because, you would think with his record as a passing game guy, they would just be stacking receivers like crazy. It's not like they don't have quarterbacks. You got Arch sitting there waiting in the wings. So I'm a little surprised by it too. A buddy of mine even mentioned, because you do know that Sark's going through a divorce right now. Maybe that's influenced something. I don't know. But I'd imagine Texas at some point is going to go on another run before signing day.
Yeah, and they did pick up Ryan Wingo, the big five-star in last year's class. High expectations for him this year, but they did have KJ Lacey already. They're stacking quarterbacks. I mean, Arch, hey man, the next guy's coming behind you, and so on and so forth. But we'll see. I expect Texas probably going to finish near the top 10 when it's all said and done.
Agreed.
I do owe a favor to Missouri. Last time we talked, I got comments from Mizzou fans. They're like, "You didn't talk about Missouri," so I want to touch a little bit. Eli Drinkwitz. What stands out to me, Brian, looking at their class, they're prioritizing offensive line so far. Lamont Rogers, Jack Lang, Henry Fanuku, along with the four-star wide receiver Donovan Olugbodi, I think is how you say it.
Olubide.
Yeah, I'll trust you. Quarterback Matt Zollers. Drink knows to keep having success in the SEC, you got to win in the trenches. And from the transfer portal to recruiting, they just keep stacking O-linemen.
This is the fastest rise as a program that I remember in the last 30 years, recruiting over the last year, towards the end of last season and this year. And I know a lot of it's probably NIL, but I think part of it's they're just a physical, good football team to watch. They got a receiver that's going to be a first-round pick after this year. This is a dangerous football team moving forward. They got the SEC moniker right next to their name. It's a state that's got some pretty good talent, a little underrated, to be honest with you, St. Louis and Kansas City in particular. There's no reason to think they're not going to be a top 15 program moving forward. So I know they had a few seasons that were good about 10 years ago that, got them really in the mix. But this is different. They're going to be playing freshmen and sophomores and competing now. It's not just redshirt everybody and you have a great class or something. They're going to be playing kids, like you said, Jack Lang's a guy could end up being the best offensive tackle in this class. He has that kind of upside. There's the other kid they got from Texas, same kind of deal. They got two bookend tackles. That's as good as it gets. And then the kid they got, Zollers, Penn State's still mad about that. He's from right down the road from Happy Valley. So they're in a different spot. It's a great story because it's the same teams in college football pretty much every year. You and I joke about it, et cetera, but this is the one that's knocking on the door, and good for them.
Yeah, and their schedule sets up very winnable schedule this year. 10-2 could make the playoffs, so we'll see.
Oh, absolutely.
Eli Drinkwitz's building something there. All right, a couple of more quick hitters here, kind of looking around the conference. Kentucky, they added a couple of big edge rushers. Cedric Works from Ohio.
Yep.
Javian Campbell from Frankfort, Kentucky. It just seems like Mark Stoops, he likes to add those big D linemen. I look at like the size from 6'2 to 6'5, just big boys stacking on that D line.
Well, that's the one thing they've been pretty consistent with. And he's obviously a defensive-minded coach. He's the DC at Florida State, et cetera. That program has hung its hat on linemen. Let's be honest. Why would you really change? Now, they still need to score more and be more effective on offense, but that's going to keep them in games because, like you said with Missouri, like they knew they had to go get more guys. They wanted to sustain this run they've had. And they did. Kentucky's kind of doing the same. They just don't have Zollers to go with it at quarterback. But I like what they're doing overall in the trenches. Now they got to prove it that they could win some games, some key games this year. Like if they beat Florida, Tennessee, somebody like that, they can get some more of the offensive kids too.
I had a couple Arkansas fans asking what's going on with their class. They did just add 3-star D lineman Reginald Vaughn from Mississippi. They got their lone 4-star is the linebacker Tavian Wallace from Georgia, but seems like a lot of 3-stars and nothing against 3-stars. You got to have 3-stars, but Sam Pittman, I almost wonder if those rumblings of him being on the hot seat, is that resonating with maybe not being able to get any, some big time elite kids there in this class?
That's hurting. That's come up in conversations that I've had. They have to start hot early in this season, I think, to get the ball rolling with recruiting again. That's just my opinion. But like T. Will, their defense coordinator, is one of the best recruiters in the country. He's the reason they got Tavion and some of these other kids to commit. But at the end of the day, what parent's going to want to send their kid somewhere they're not sure who the head coach is going to be?
Yep.
I get it. They're in the same situation. If you look at the goofy polls and all the betting lines in Vegas, two most likely to get fired are in Fayetteville and Gainesville.
Yeah.
Which two schools are struggling right now to get commitments? It's not coincidence. So kids want to see. I can't blame them. So if those schools change it, that narrative, then you'll see more kids commit. But if they get fired, you'll see kids jump off the ship. It's just the way it is.
It's funny you mentioned T. Will. I saw the video of him rapping this week on Twitter.
I did too.
Randy Moss was retweeting. I'm like, if that can't help you with recruiting, I don't know what else can help you with that. But we'll see. Just real quick, looking at some of the other names. Obviously, South Carolina, Shane Beamer's done a good job. They're sitting at 30. They'll probably climb up there, get a big stud or two as his class rolls along. Jeff Levy's sitting at 33 at Mississippi State. Pretty good for his first. He's just getting there.
I think they'll be a little better than people think.
The one that jumps out to me, though, Ole Miss at 45. Like, I get they're going full portal, but Lane, you can't go full portal every year. You got to have a foundation of recruits.
I'm a little surprised by that. A Kylan Deere, a kid that maybe the best running back in the country, might trend to Bama. You can't lose kids like that out of your state to go play for the rival. It is weird, but they went portal. He's a different guy. Me trying to talk logic about Lane Kiffin is not very logical, to be honest with you. But I said the same thing. There's a lot of talent in that state. It's just like there's one kid in each town that's spread out. That state per capita is loaded. They've missed on some kids, and they're still in on some others, trying to flip some. But I am surprised they don't have 2 or 3 more big names in the boat.
Just one more thought here. Obviously, Vandy, they're down at 74. They got 9 commits. We'll see what happens with Clark Lee in his future. But Florida Gators, really slow at just 10 commits, sitting at 59 overall. You feel bad for Napier. We just had Phil Steele on the show this week. He thinks Florida is a sleeper. He thinks 7-8 wins is doable. He thinks we're kind of overblowing this the schedule is brutal, that they actually have a pretty good team, but it's going to take that kind of season to really get some momentum going here for Billy Napier.
Well, they open with Miami, so there's no dearth of opportunity. They're recruiting against Miami directly with a bunch of guys, but they're back 5 of their schedule. What is it? They got like Missouri, Ole Miss, Georgia, LSU. I mean, it's ridiculous. Yeah, if he wins 8 games against the schedule, he should be the head football coach for the Gators. I still think 6-6 is more likely. They got to win that Miami game. Again, if they do, you'll see more kids jump on board. It's, in my opinion, one of the top 5 jobs in college football. It's not hard to win there. But once you're on the hot seat, I've talked to kids directly. Like, that's on their mind. So They have to win that Miami game. They have to win that game. By the way, they have UCF coming to town not long after. If he loses to UCF at home, we could do a whole episode on just the drama that unfolds after that.
Yeah, but I mean, Gus with KJ Jefferson, like, it could happen. It's tough. Our buddy Lynn Scarborough from Lindy Sports said if he goes 7-5, he's going to vote him coach of the year because of that schedule. So
that's real rough. I don't know about that.
Yeah, he is Brian Smith. He is our recruiting insider here on Locked On. Plenty of stuff. I mean, you got more stuff coming here these next couple of weeks that you'll be covering, right?
Yeah, I'm getting ready to go to IMG at the end of this week. And then I'm going to be going to all the different places. I'm going to stop by and see DJ Pickett and a bunch of other things too. So a lot of stuff going on, my friend. It's recruiting never stops.
It never ends. Brian, always appreciate the time, man. Thanks so much for jumping in with us.
Thank you, sir.
All right. That is going to do it for this edition of Locked On SEC. Thank you guys so much for making us your first listen every day. Again, shout out to everydayers. Keep coming back and checking us out. And hey, for your second listen, why don't you check out Locked On Gators? We gave a little love there to Florida. Our buddy Brandon Olson does a good job talking all things Florida. He's all over the recruiting stuff, and he's breaking down all the different position groups as we get ready for the start of another SEC football season. Our thanks again to Brian Smith. He does a fantastic job. Give him a follow. And again, keep this locked right here to Locked On SEC. We'll keep getting you up to date on all the biggest news and stories going on around the Southeastern Conference. I'm Chris Gordy. This has been Locked On SEC.